Welcome back to Slithering Stories, where every whisper is older than breath, and every tale leaves its teeth behind. Tonight, we follow the Hollow Saint into a place the world has long forgotten. Beneath the broken monastery, beneath the ash-veined trees, beyond the reach of prayer, there coils something ancient, not alive, not dead, a root that drinks from the bones of gods and blooms in silence. It does not speak in words, it speaks in marrow, prue, and when it calls you by name, you will remember what you never were. But this is Chapter 9, The Ashes-Worn Root, a descent past death, into a covenant deeper than blood. There are roots older than tongues, older than prayer, older than even the shape of grief. They drink from the veins of dead gods, and flower in silence beneath our crumbling altars. And if one listens not with ears, but with the Maroth, the whisper of a covenant deeper than blood, one sworn not in life, but in ash. It began in the hush, after the moaning bells ceased. The monastery of Vencor lay in ruin, its pillars sundered, its saint faceless scraped, clean by wind and age, and the fingernails of those two desperate to remember. And yet the Hollow Saint stood unmoved among the wreckage, her hand still gloved in that sacred iron, that ossuary glove which pulsed now with a blacker heat. A duskless silence lay over the valley, thick and dry as unburied parchment. No birds, no breath, only the soft grind of her boots through soot as she moved through the fallen gate. Behind her, the reliquary bearer limped, his eyes swaddled in gauze, his back bent beneath the charred box of votive bones. In his sleep he had murmured names not written in any tongue of man. She had not woken him. She knew better than to wake a priest. The earth here cracked underfoot, a lattice of long-buried root systems, rising like rib cages through the ash. The trees that remained were hollowed and bled resin that steamed in the dawnless air. Every step was a pilgrimage through ruin, but the Hollow Saint moved without pause. She was seeking something, not salvation, no. That lie had long since soured in her mouth, but rather a memory, half-dreamt, place beneath places, a tomb that never closed, and beneath it all, the root called. It had no voice, no words, but she heard it always. Now, since the choir, since the flaying, since the reliquarious lid had wept blood, and the saints in her dreams had begun to whisper back. They came to the mouth just after the third sundown that never was. It yawned, open beneath an altar stone, older than the empire. A cleft of carved onyx, edged in sigils, lost to every scriptorium, save perhaps the one inscribed in flesh upon the back of her own left eye. The wind there blew not outward, but in, as if the earth hungered. The reliquary bearer fell to his knees. No further, he rasped, his breath clouded with ash. That is not a passage, it is a wound. The Hollow Saint turned slowly. Her gaze, black-ringed with insomnia and scar, met his sightless face. She did not speak, but her silence cut deeper than rebuke. She descended. The shaft spiraled, a throat of stone and moss-veined bone. No torch held flame. Instead, she held out her gloved hand, and the sigils engraved in the gauntlet smoldered with a sullen, white-blue light. Walls wept roots. Some twitched hours, days. It blurred. She descended until the air thickened to pitch, until her thoughts moved slower than her feet, until her breath was a memory of something the surface once required. The deeper she went, the more the dream returned. The boy on the gallows, the skinless choir, the winged tongue that licked the altar. She walked into the memory now, for it was not memory, it was a place, Beirut. It lay coiled in the cathedral of the deep below, like a god slain sideways, its bark riddled with mouths, and its sap clotting the floor in thick pools of black, be pulsed with breathless rhythm, and from each cleft root, from each graven socket, grew faces, half-formed, all weeping, all whispering names she had not yet earned. The hollow saint knelt, at last. Her glove hissed as it touched the root. The iron curled, melted, spread. Her bones screamed as the gauntlet unfolded itself into the root, and the root, in turn, enfolded her. There was no pain, not truly, only revelation, only hunger. And in the tongue of the first blood, the root spoke. You are late, daughter of ash. The scent before you bled cleaner. Shall I hollow you more? She bled without nodding. Chapter X. The crown that fed the worm. There is no throne the worm will not inherit. From the Apocrypha of Saint Hilaire, etched in bone and sealed in lead, all crowns are hollow, and the hollower the sovereign, the hungrier the roots beneath the empire's corpse-choked soil, beneath cities rusting in prayer, beneath the brittle cathedrals, where tongues still twitch. Upon altars there lies a chamber, older than obedient. It was not built, it was not blessed, it was bled by. And it was here, in this inverted sanctum, that the hollow saint would at last meet the crown, not to wear it. By, to fear. Be, crossed the mire of sorrow's grief by moonless direction. The reliquary bearer now carried on the saint's back thin as a promise lost in wind. His breath was ragged. His dreams bled aloud. She said nothing as they passed between trees whose bark wept names. She knew the route path now. By, it spoke through her limbs. Her fingers tingled with the rot language. Each pulse was a commandment. By the third nightfall that never truly darkened, the earth opened before them like a suppurating wound. The mouth of the crypt known as hollower place, excommunicated from maps and memory, becentered with only the reliquary and the glove. The path was steep, and the descent not steep enough. They met her in silence. 7 of them, clothed in hair and blood and stitched remnants of liturgical robes, their mouths sewn open, not shut. Their tongues hung down like sickle fruit, pulsing, whispering, scripture in a language the saint could almost understand. We waited. We hunger. Feed us the sovereign. The hollow saint did not draw her blade. The glove answered instead. It hissed, unfurling like bone metal silk, and touched the closest child on the brow. They did not scream when they burned. They wept in relief, and with each screamless death, a sigil blazed anew on the saint's spine. She did not weep. Her weeping days were buried deep, deeper, always deeper. Cerdun's Hollow was not a place. It was a process, a forgetting, a sanctified rot that peeled away identity like the rind from an overripe corpse. She came at last to the hall of the crown. It was not the throne room. Peas. It was a ribcage vast, circular, alive. The bones were from something old enough to predate mammal or memory. And there, at the center, suspended on hooks of breath and prayer, floated it. The crown. It was not gold, teeth. It was not iron. It was made of teeth, human, angelic, apostate, infant. God, the hollow saint knelt. It pulsed once, and the worm awoke. The reliquary bearer, long silent, screamed. His voice split, as if another were crawling up through him. Bai's body flailed. His eyes rolled back, but not in ecstasy and recognition. The worm remembered him. The reliquary snapped open of its own accord. The bones within began to sing. Not music, not language, just need. The crown floated closer to the saint's bowed head, and she heard it, a voice with no throat, yet infinite echo. Hollow is not absence. Hollow is hunger. Feed me what you are not. Dissent stood. She did not fight the crown. She unwrapped the glove, layer by layer, each strip of sacred iron screaming its death song, until her hand was bare, truly bare. Where skin had once been, only scripture remained. Black, weeping ink, symbols that twisted as the worm read them. She reached out and placed her palm on the crown. It fed not on blood, not on flesh, but on her doubt, on the hollowness between who she had been and who the church demanded she become. The reliquary bearer died, eyes open, smiling. The worm whispered its thanks. The crown did not settle on her head. It descended through her. She swallowed it. Each fang, each molar of apostasy, sliding down her throat like judgment, reborn. Her spine twisted, her teeth lengthened, her breath turned black, and still she stood. Still she did not scream. By the worm entered and wept, for it had found a saint who did not resist, and this it had never known. She wrote, not ascended, rose from blood, from bile, from belief. She stood atop the reliquary, now filled with ash, and the root that led her there curled back, retreating from her feet. She was not one of them now. She was not one of us. She was a vessel, a void made flesh. We, a fraught without need, for throne or priest. The worm lay silent in her belly, waiting, and the crown, fed and sated, whispered one final truth. The kingdom is inside you now. The Hollow Saint left Serdan's hollow at dawn. There was no light in the sky, only smoke. Behind her, nothing followed. The forest bent to her passage. The wind choked in her presence. She did not walk as one escaping. She walked as one returned. Returned not to conquer, not to convert. By it to remind the world that crowns are never given. They are grown in suffering, in silence, in worms. Chapter 11. The Howling Psalter. And when they opened their mouths to pray, nothing came but teeth. Epistle of the unwritten choir. There is a sound older than breath, older than name, older even than prayer. It does not echo. It does not cease. It remembers. This was the sound that entered the Hollow Saint as she left the crypt of the crown, not behind her, but within. It howled through her bones now, not like wind, but like inheritance. The worm was quiet, but the psalter it left behind had begun to speak. Its pages were not made of paper. They were fashioned from remorse-layered skins of those who had sung too long, too loudly, in the name of a god who no longer bled. The Hollow Saint did not carry it. She was it when she walked. The land around her trembled, not in fear but in recognition. Even the roots pulled back from her tread, curling into themselves like dead tongues. She emerged from the hollow into a world already altered, above, in the cities of spire and stone. The sky had split now, in thunder, but in confession. Pale rain fell, not as water, but as letter syllables, from a dying liturgy. Each droplet struck the earth and left behind a fragment of scripture, warped and quivering, crawling like wounded insects toward sanctuary. She did not return to the cathedral. The cathedral came to her. The ruins of St. Eberek's arch once, reduced to rubble by riot and apostasy, had begun to reassemble. But not as it once was. The bricks wept blood. The bells tolled backward. Foe. The altar beat like a heart. And from the shattered choir lofts came a sound, singing without breath. It was the psalter, and it was hungry. Within the saint's throat, new notes formed. She did not know the language. Peesh. She was the language, the choir of skin that once haunted her path had now become her shadow, faceless, voiceless, dragging behind her in a long, undulating mass of penitence. Ply. They did not follow. They did not obey. They clung like regret, like second skin. Bear a procession of guilt, a parade of swallowed prayers. She led them, not toward glory, but toward recital. Each step she took resounded through the hollows of every church, every confessional, every monastery whose walls still remembered the names of children once buried in silence. And those names began to rise. Beneath the pews, mouths opened. Beneath the relics, worms began to chant. The hollow saint entered the shattered square of Gratian Thalas city to refuse the ash, the last to hold aloft banners of empire, the last to claim the right to an unaltered god. She did not strike, she simply stood, and the psalter howled, window shattered not from force, but from recognition. Monks screamed as their vestments bled. Every image of the old saints turned their faces away. The bishop of the city, clad in sapphire and certainty, came forth to rebuke her. He spoke only once, and then his voice was devoured, not by her, not by any blade, by his own tongue, which twisted, blackened, and fell from his mouth in the shape of a psalm. He wept, he dropped to his knees. He began to sing, not words, not melody admission, and one by one the people of Gratient joined. The square of heretics became the choir pit, and the saint, unmoving, closed her eyes. She did not desire this. She did not choose this, but she had become the instrument. The psalter was her flesh. Now, every sin she had not committed now roosted in her chest. Like birds of pitch, they whispered to one another. They composed. The world would be sung again, but first it would be undone. For 7 days the song did not cease. Children born during that week did not cry, they hummed. The sick did not die. They became tuning forks. Even the stone of the cathedral chimed when struck by sunlight. And at the end of the 7th day, something answered. A voice, not from below nor above, but within. It was not the worm, it was not the crown, it was the god that mourned its name. It had been watching, it had been silent. It was no longer, I did not make you, it said through 1,000 mouths in unison. But I remember who did. The hollow saint opened her eyes. There was no fear in her, no joy, only resonance. She turned from Gratianth. The people kept singing. She moved toward the valley of Shrieking Bone, where the exiled bishops had fled, toward the last bastion of dogma, unbent by a rock, toward the final tower that still proclaimed salvation through submission. She went not as herald, not as savior, not as curse. She went as mere. And behind her, the howling psalter followed, page by page, face by face, lament by lament, until the very wind itself hummed in prayerless unison. The saint's mouth did not move, but from her chest, from her spine, from every word she had ever swallowed to survive, there came the song. Not to convert, not to consume, but to remind the world of the one truth it had buried deepest. What you silence will one day sing. Chapter the 12th. The altar beneath tongues. Before there was scripture, there were mouths. Before there were mouths, there was the altar. Fragment from the flayed testament. No city slept any more. By the 12th day of the psalter's rising, no street lay silent, no steeple went unsplit. The wind that once carried prayer now carried something older, a musicless vibration, a throbbing beneath language that made birds weep mid-flight and children speak in rhyme before they ever learned breath. And at the center of it all, the Hollow Saint walked. She did not hunger. She did not thirst. She did not speak, for she was spoken through. In the deep fault lines of the highland ridges lay the last vault of resistance, the subdermal cathedral carved into the jawbone of a fallen colossus, where the high apostolic tongue had been preserved in worm-proof vaults, inked in the blood of innocence, and sealed beneath layers of liturgical. It was here they believed the saint would falter, for here lay the altar beneath tongues, not a structure, but a sentence, buried so deep into the crust of doctrine that even the worm would not chew its marrow. It was said that no lie could survive in its presence, and no truth could leave it. The saint came alone, not because she lacked army or shadow, but because the psalter had gone quiet, as if the song had reached its breath, as if the last note could only be sung in stillness. The guards did not resist her. They opened their mouths and swallowed their keys. She walked past them as one walks through fog. Deeper still, the catacombs beneath the vault grew narrower, until the stones themselves began to hum with withheld memory. Scripture had been buried here. Not just texts, events, whole betrayals turned into bricks, murders set in mortar. Even the breath of the last prophet had been captured in a copper urn, pressurized and sanctified, kept locked in a reliquary of broken oaths. She passed them. None stirred. They remembered her. At the bottom, she reached the altar. It was not made of stone. It was made of mouths, layer atop one another like scales. These mouths had no eyes, no nose, no body, just lips, and every lip quivered. It pulsed with memory. It trembled with expectation. The saint placed both hands upon it, and it opened, not in halves, in directions. It unfolded like a wound, unwilling to heal. Rows upon rows of tongues, each branded with sigils long forbidden, each still writhing with the last word it had ever tried to speak. And from this pit came a voice, not one, all. You carry him. You carry him. You carry him. You carry him. The saint said nothing, but the psalter began to speak. Again. Not from her chest, not from her throat, but from every scar, every break, every bone that had remembered pain without demand. The sound it made was not beautiful. It was raw, a keening, skinless sound, like memory being forced to confess. Biota screamed. The tongues tried to flee the pit, but the stone held them fast. Blood poured up, not down, and through it the saint stepped in, up to her knees, then her waist. The mouths tried to beg. By the psalm would not relent. Each word sung from her now tore another veil of doctrine, another layer of ecclesiastical protection. The high apostolic tongue tried to resist it, uncoiled from its cage, a serpent of ink and vowels, and attempted to bind her mouth shut. She bit it in half. And where the blood fell, a name, appeared. Her name, not the name she had been given, not the name she had taken, but the name she had forgotten, the day she took the vow and became hollow. She spoke it aloud, once, only once, and the altar collapsed, not into rubble, into choir. The mouths unsealed from the walls and became faces again, not whole, not healed, but free. They floated upward, groaning with half-remembered tongues, ascending the catacomb shaft like sparks drawn to the final hymn. Above, Vardagasc began to wail. Stained glass, shattered in harmonic resonance. Stone peeled like fruit. The sanctified urns of speech exploded one by one, releasing the breaths of dead prophets, now screaming. The bishop Primarch fled to the spire of remission. The saint followed. She found him kneeling before a mirror not made of glass, but of silence, an artifact said to reflect not what you are, but what the God you pray to thinks of you. She never touched him. She only turned the mirror and let him see. He died not from fear. He died from understanding. And when he fell, the mirror cracked, and the sound it made was the first prayer ever uttered, spoken backward as if being devoured. The hollow saint stood alone atop the spire. She did not raise her arms. She did not call the song by. From every pore of the cathedral, from every worm in the soil, from every cracked hymn book and silenced martyr's tooth, the psalter rose in full B, and the saint became its altar, not beneath tongues, but above them. For the first time, the psalter sang with joy, not triumph, not conquest, but release. And in that release, the skies did not break. They knelt, clouds folded downward. The sun dimmed in reverence. The towers bent like sun. And at the very edge of the known world, beyond the ash line, the crown stirred once more within her. The worm opened one eye. It did not speak. It did not sing. It listened. And the saint, hollow no longer, began to walk north, toward the throne that did not exist, toward the God that no longer wept, toward the kingdom that had never been born. They built altars of tongues and called it worship. Bah! I sang a song. Their gods could not answer. The cathedrals wept. The prophets drowned in their own scripture. And the hollow saint was hollow no longer. The crown stirs. The worm listens. North, dot, 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 lies a throne that was never meant to exist. This was Slithering Stories.